Did I just stop caring about my wife? Will that help? Will that help her have more desire for me? Will that help her decide that the space that she wants is enough? How can I help her grow desire for the relationship, for our marriage, for intimate connection with me? That's what Cynthia and I are going to talk about here on today's The C Note Show with myself, Jeff Allen, and Cynthia Cruz. Cynthia and I practice and believe in the journey of relationship, the journey of sexual depth and connection. And we teach that to men that want to grow that. You want to grow your own skills of leadership and mojo and how to offer safety, inspiration, and guidance to her along the way. Guidance for yourself. That's why you're here. And you want to be able to lead her in a powerful way. And that's what Cynthia and I practice in our lives and in our professional teachings, either one-on-one in our groups or on these calls like this. So should I just stop caring about my wife? Will this help? By the end of this call, we're going to talk through the 6 reasons, the 6 motivations for sex from a woman's point of view. And let's go ahead and get into this right now. So as a man, what do I need first? Cynthia and I teach, and I've talked on many different calls and many trainings about the kingly life path framework here of masculine frame, emotional safety, and then leadership and intimacy. So if you want more details on that, check out our other videos, or we've taught that before. So certainly ask questions if you like. There's the Stoic triangle. Okay, well, there's my virtue. I have to know what my values are. I have to know what my boundaries are. I have to know what I want. I have to know what I can control and what I can't control. And I need to take responsibility with actions in the world and recognize that I do have to step up and do something. I can't just think about it every day. And this journey of intimacy and depth, well, journey is what? An act of traveling from one place to another. It says a long and often difficult process of personal change and development. Well, why is it difficult? Because change is always difficult. We have ingrained within us beliefs and expectations from childhood, culture, our past experiences. So it's long, and we want it to be long. You don't want it to be done. This journey that Cynthia and I believe in and we teach is one of always moving toward the horizon. There's never a goal line for intimacy or sex or depth. It's something that you want. You have to believe that this journey is something that you're going to be on, where you're traveling to. So what's a spiritual journey? You know, we're not religious. I wasn't raised religious. Many guys are. But what is this journey, the spiritual journey? And well, at first it involves healing and affirming your ego, the ego side of you, that you can feel secure within your self-esteem, belief in yourself, and that you have a capacity for love and generosity. Those are the baseline high moods, the baseline values to grow in this endeavor, to grow in spiritual depth together, sexual depth together. So I thought this was interesting. This is from the Royal College of Psychiatrists. What is spirituality? And just a blurb here. Spirituality, a personal exploration by this Dr. Maya Spencer. I love these 2 first opening paragraphs here. Spirituality involves the recognition of a feeling or sense or belief that there is something greater than myself, something more to being human than sensory experience alone. I added the word alone. And that the greater whole of which we are part is cosmic or divine in nature. Spirituality means knowing that our lives have significance in a context beyond a mundane everyday existence at the level of biological needs that drive selfishness and aggression. It means knowing that we are a significant part of a purposeful unfolding of life in our universe. And Cynthia and I believe in the purposeful unfolding of life in relationship, in sexuality. Guys ask us, should I just plan to never have sex again? Should I just stay in this relationship in which my wife seems happy to never be intimate, to never explore more deeply? Well, you have to decide first if you're okay, let's say, never having sex again, if you're okay not being on an intimate journey with your woman, if you're okay with that. And if you are, then it's not really a boundary or a value. And that's where a rub often happens. I'm going to talk about this right now. A rub often happens of, well, you want to grow through all three of these levels of relationship, like Cynthia and I teach, the body, the mind, and the soul, the ever increasing depth. You want sexuality and polarity. We taught on this 2 weeks ago. Well, if she doesn't want the relationship right now, if she doesn't look up to you, if she doesn't desire you, if she isn't open to change, if she doesn't want more with you, if you don't have a shared vision together, it's kind of a non-starter. And that's a scary thing. If she doesn't want this right now, if she doesn't look up to me right now, desire me right now, if she's not open to change right now, well, then what do I focus on? You focus on growing your own frame, growing your own leadership. Well, all right, let's assume you've been doing those things. That's a nice preamble into our topic for today. Well, what are our choices for motivation? If she doesn't just believe these things automatically, if she's not wanting sex or intimacy right now, should I just ignore her? Should I just leave her alone? Well, how's that going to help things? So we're going to get into the carrot and the stick. And we don't use the stick, right? It's not okay to use the stick at least any longer. When I was a kid, I got belted when I was a kid. That was certainly one form of the stick, but it's a whole different conversation, right? So we don't use punishment. We don't want to, or we can't use controlling forms with our woman. We don't want to shame her or criticize. So we don't want to use the stick because why? Why do we not want to use why don't we want to use criticism or shame or what don't you want me to, and all this like kind of needy, weak or punishing behavior? Why don't we want to use those things with our woman? Cynthia, let's start there.
Yeah, well, I think none of us wants to hear criticism, but especially for that feminine energy in her, that's the type of energy that she very much will cloak herself against. She'll shut down, internalize, or then blame you about, because the last thing the feminine blooms into is criticism, or even more masculine challenge that's not the feminine's forte. She is like water that expands into a space that sees her and invites, and she wants to become more of in that space.
Yeah. So thank you. What about pressure? There's good pressure and there's bad pressure, right? I could threaten something, I could give an ultimatum, or I could use criticism, and that's a bad form of pressure. But what about if I inherently am on a journey of wanting depth and sexuality in my life, and I know that I'm going to be on that journey, and I
Mm,
would love for my woman to be on that journey with me, and I'm not saying that to shame her. I'm not saying that to force her into something. But let's say as a man, I've come to this realization through this work that that's something I don't want to live without. I
yeah.
don't have a time frame on it, but it's something, no, I'm not okay never having sex again. No, I'm not okay foregoing a journey of depth through sexuality and intimacy. Is that the carrot? Is that the stick? What does that feel like for a woman?
Well, it's such a tenuous spot, which I really get, because you use the word pressure, and no woman wants to feel pressured or pressured to be intimate. However, I think there is something about the feminine, about women who want to avoid feeling pressure at all. They want to avoid feeling even the difference between how their feminine energy meets masculine energy. And in that polarity, there is inherent, it can feel stressful to her sometimes. She can feel deeply your pull of what you're wanting to share with her. And I don't think that is bad. I think that's an invitation for growth when it's held in an incredible space by a masculine presence such as you. And part of the feminine's journey is to have stamina with, this doesn't feel comfortable right now, or being invited into sex right now, I'm feeling some resentment about something that happened 5 years ago. Connection and intimacy and relationship is an opportunity for the feminine to have emotion, to realize emotion and move through. And that doesn't happen if there's always avoidance of inherent give and take in relationship, breathing in and out in relationship. And that's normal. It's normal. Just as if we are underwater and we have to hold our breath a little bit, that's not always comfortable. That's part of learning in relationship, the inhale and the exhale with you.
Yeah, a mistake, a misconception I had in the past that most guys have is that if she's uncomfortable in any way, that's a bad thing. And It's not that if her being uncomfortable is a bad thing, it's if it then makes me uncomfortable. If then I try to fix it, if then I try to not make that pregnant pause or her uncomfortable feelings happen. So walk us through that for a minute. She feels uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable and I'm okay with it,
Mhm.
versus if you feel uncomfortable and then I start to backpedal, try to fix, I lose control of my emotions. What's the difference? Even though the woman's experience is the same.
Yeah, I would say the being okay with her discomfort is an opportunity for her to feel a different nervous system reality. It's an opportunity for her to feel beyond her current emotion and feel that in this space, maybe that emotion is not permanent. She doesn't feel you turning into the storm to meet her storm. And that's a moving forward experience. That's an evolving experience for her versus, if her discomfort makes you just uncomfortable, there's so much story she can create about you're judging her, you're angry at her, you don't listen to anything she says, you don't respect her boundaries. There's all this that can be created versus her feeling just, oh, this is different. This man stays in his open presence, is not catapulted away by what I'm feeling in the moment. And that can build long term trust in her that you can hold that kind of space.
Yeah, thank you. Versus if I lose myself. So we'll go to the question of today. Should I just not care? What does it look like from your point of view or with the clients that we work with if a man starts to just not care? Okay, I'm going to detach. I just don't care. And that's on the way to caring about her as a human, as a person, but
Mhm.
knowing that you're not trying to fix her bad moods. And so if I start to get worried, if I lose myself in the storm, I try to fix. How is that different than not caring versus allowing her to have that emotion without trying to fix it?
Yeah, it's such a different there's a gray area there. I could put out there that becoming into not caring mode is something that really sometimes can clue in a woman's evolutionary brain and get her over the hump of power play because she feels like you're not there to push against anymore, and that can really touch her into what she's truly wanting. And that also can make her feel if the wound is in our marriage, all these years, I haven't felt seen or heard or understood or listened to, that can feed on that. So the detachment the masculine can have while also staying heart centered is a really, at least from the feminine perspective, that's a incredibly powerful stance for you to take and a very empowering move to take in relationship dynamics.
Yeah, thank you. Let's step forward and talk more specifically about the forms of motivation for sex. This is another picture of the carrot and the stick, right? We might we might think we're holding the carrot and we're not aware that we've got the pitchfork in this picture, the stick in this picture. And often that's done, let's say passive aggressively in our attitude, in that we become huffy, in these ways that we're not aware. So a huge piece of this work, guys, is to have men that you go to talk through your stories with so that you don't accidentally have this pitchfork in your hand. How common is it that you see stories of men that aren't aware that they're holding a pitchfork in their hand versus, so our goal here is to be the carrot. Our goal here
Mhm.
is to modulate how much carrot we're offering, really. We don't want to have the pitchfork. We don't want to be using the stick. We want to modulate how much carrot, how much attention, how much affection, how much intention that we're offering to the relationship, because that's really the only variable that we can control when we put down the pitchfork. So how often do you see men holding a pitchfork accidentally? What's that look like?
Well, so like pulling back the curtain, I would say even as I hear like men like you talk, and it isn't even a pitchfork you're holding, the feminine can often translate some of the logical more masculine compartmentalization, the huge strengths you have as a man, as a pitchfork. And so that can be part of the tremendous surprise where she suddenly turns to you and says, I'm not happy. I want separation. Like, I've never been happy in our relationship. She is referring to that feeling of being poked in that way, and maybe without you even realizing, she's turned it around and feels like she's then justified to hold the pitchfork herself.
Yeah. It's so difficult, guys, to let someone move away from you, whether it's a child or a spouse or a friend, a colleague, a sibling. It's so painful to see them walking the other direction. But every time we try to cajole them back or use shame or control the situation, all we're doing is really pulling out a pitchfork. And that's not what we want to do. So the carrot is what they want to move toward, of course, and the pitchfork is more of a controlling, punishing. So how do you mean?
Kind of an example of what would be a carrot. What would be a good carrot for me to use? But then what is the pitchfork that I might use? Okay, they're not going towards the carrot based on that illustration. What am I doing to cajole them towards the carrot, I guess?
Yeah, that they want. So I'll show this graphic, and you've been working with us for a bit of time. So what do you think women like to move toward? What do you think entices the woman like a carrot?
Emotional safety.
Yeah, you can read. That's good. So what's what's emotional what's emotional safety mean? What does a woman want to move toward?
It's in a place where she feels like she can express herself. Like Cynthia was saying, that we would judge, or she feels judged. And I think that's probably an easy thing that us guys do and criticize, that she doesn't want that, but to be more nurtured and uplifted, praised versus being cut down all the time.
That's really well said. That's really well said. How often do you treat yourself like that? How often do you treat yourself with uplifting and positive? You're smiling and laughing versus judgment. Yeah.
Probably not as much as I should. I mean, there are times that I'm here and I'll have a conversation going off in my head and I'm cussing kind of at myself for past failures, and no, I beat myself down pretty good. I don't need anybody else.
Right. Yeah. And I ask because I can relate that a lot of this starts within us. So the habit that we have of how we treat ourselves
Yeah.
leaks out into judging her. Yeah. So that's a great question, Carl. I'm going to keep going here. I appreciate it. We'll talk more specifics. Thank you. Yeah, come on in.
This is an interesting topic. Just kind of the way that it's shown in that picture, the dangling carrot and the pitchfork. My situation has changed a lot, and it's changed for the better, which I'm very happy with. But we're not out of the woods yet. You guys know this, talking to me prior. But the thing that my wife still tells me is that, well, I feel pressured. I feel pressured, right? And so I think what I've done a much better job of is dangling that carrot, but dangling it in a more genuine way, and not kind of surreptitiously holding the pitchfork behind her. But she still perceives my advances as pressure, and she's told me that. And so back to what Cynthia was saying, and I've heard this in other groups too. There is an inherent pressure,
right,
when you're in in an exclusive marital relationship, right? And so in this context, sex is definitely on the table, right? And if my wife were ever to tell me, hey, it's just never going to happen again, well, then I'm going to exit stage left at that point. I've already, come to terms with that idea. And so I wonder how to navigate that space in particular, because she doesn't tell me that she's feeling pressured in any particular way. It just seems to me, because I've asked her this before, pretty directly, is it my advances that cause you to feel pressure? And she says, well, yeah, sometimes. And then when I ask her to elaborate on the other time, she can't. Like, she can't find the words, or she's very closed off a lot of times. It's always kind of been her nature. So I can't get anything out of her, and I'm done pressuring her to get things out of her at this point, right? So I just kind of let it go. And so I guess my direct question to you guys is, how do you navigate that space where you're really convinced, you're really confident that you're not holding the pitchfork anymore, and your wife's perceived pressure is just the inherent pressure that comes with being in a marital relationship, with a partner who is willing to die on this hill in the context of having sex in the relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually were just discussing that over the past 2 weeks. We're adding to our book, we're writing our book, and this is something that we've seen over and over. What you're saying, there is inherent responsibility in relationship, and there's inherent pressure within a relationship. And so I'll start with number one, and I'll go to Cynthia. Number one is we need to know that, and we need to be okay with that. The fact that she does feel some type of pressure is normal and healthy and okay. It's not to be completely removed. It's, first of all, that's impossible. And actually that removes a big piece of desire, is the inherent pressure in the dynamic. So from there, what would you ask with that situation?
Yeah, actually, I was curious if that idea of pressure has come up in your relationship with her, even before the idea of like intimacy is pressure, sex is too much pressure.
Prior to what?
Like earlier in your relationship, would she even talk about feeling pressured?
You know, I don't know if she ever came out and said that, but I was a completely different person too for a long time, right?
Sure.
I was a jerk. I was a dick. Like I'm sure a lot of us guys were at one point, where the pressure that I was putting on her was just boilerplate stuff that we talk about here, right? Whining, moaning, complaining, passive aggressive behavior, you know, begging. I mean, I did it all, right? I did it all. So, and that went on for a long time, but I've been so far removed from that. I mean, it's been probably a couple of years at least, probably more than that now, where when she says no, I'm just like, all right, you know, it's cool. But again, she still calls it pressure.
I don't think this offers like the masculine answer to how to deal with that, but that whenever someone shares with me a woman can't put specific detail to why she feels a certain way, it's an indication that it's a sense feeling she has that really isn't attached to the reality of the moment. So that in like she just feels pressured in general could be what she hasn't fully moved through her body from earlier in your relationship. And then often there's sometimes things that we all experience, maybe even as a kid, when we don't have a lot of verbal ability to explain. And so it just is a feeling we have. And again, it's not based in reality. So I guess I just offer that one detail of her not in the present moment when she's saying that, and that there is opportunity for her to fully let that go from her body.
Yeah, that's really well said. So that's something to recognize. Yeah.
I can add one more thing, and this is my perception of what's going on. I think she feels internal pressure about herself, and it's not necessarily pressure of mine. And I've told you guys this before. She has substantial body shaming issues, substantial, right? And so we're working on that. She's down 12 pounds in like 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And her dedication and commitment to this plan, this exercise and diet plan is going to work. I'm convinced. But here's why I'm untrusting of this, because this has happened in years past where she's gone through these cycles of weight loss and then she'll put it back on. And here's why I don't trust what she tells me when she says, this is a me thing. It has nothing to do with you. This is my body image, and I'm not happy with the way I look and the way I feel. In the times that she's been in those spaces, in some cases for months on end, this part of our relationship has not changed.
Right.
Now, I was a different person back then, and so the story is to be continued, I think. But I'm not putting a lot of faith and trust.
Well, and you shouldn't.
Yeah. Said
and you shouldn't. When something's a her issue, that's a her issue. For instance, if I were to say to my woman, you know, I'm not feeling great about my career, so I'm just going to ignore you for the next 12 months while I work on my career because this is a me thing. Trust me. After 12 months, then I'll come back and be this fixed man. Well,
Yeah,
no, that's not okay. Yeah. And I wouldn't say that to a woman because that's a logical, it's a logical argument. But so no. And this is the reason I included the journey of depth and intimacy needs to be something that you can every man can articulate and truly value. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Otherwise, who cares? In other words, if she says, believe me, sex is on hold for some period of time until XYZ happens, if I don't really care, about the journey itself, then I don't have a leg to stand on. Well, what does it matter? Or if I say to myself, like when I'm injured, I've pulled my pectoral muscle 3 different times over the past year or two, and I had to go back down to lifting hardly any weight. I didn't just say, oh, well, I'm just not going to go to the gym and exercise at all. It's I have an injury, but I'm still need to take care of my health for my own. So we still need to put efforts into the relationship, into the journey of health, into the journey of career, into the journey of relationship. Now that's for me to say to you, man to man, right? My take would be, hey, I honor that and I love that. And this is a bit of a different topic, but I want fill in the blank. I believe fill in the blank. We've talked with you about this, right? So I believe that we both need to be putting into the relationship. We both need to be putting into our intimacy regardless. Maybe that means just snuggling in front of, Netflix or something. Maybe that means taking a shower or a bath or a walk together. It doesn't need to be porn star, cartwheel sex or anything like this, but I want connection all along the way. Young, old, fat, skinny, injured or not, this is a part of the journey. I want a relationship with you, my love, sweetheart, baby cakes, like cupcake, as Steve Forsman would say, kind of thing. So that's just a baseline belief that we as men have to have. Otherwise, well, if I don't have that belief versus I do, if I don't have that belief and I let her weight or my job or drama with the kids, get in the way, because if I don't have a baseline belief, how is that different than this is not going to get in the way?
It kind of reminds me of the like level 1 versus level 2, 3 relationship. That level 1 of everything, I'll speak from the women's perspective, everything has to be perfect in order for me to be happy, feel sexy, turned on, receptive. And to stay in that story is kind of being stuck in that level 1 relationship where there really isn't soul, because there's a whole lot of external soulless things driving the boat. Whereas when a woman gets to experience with your tenor of masculinity, the total opposite to perfection, that there is so much of life you appreciate in her and her energy in her that is beyond, eons beyond the physical perfect package. That's the kind of experience I would want for her or for any woman, as painful and as pressurized and as much as she wants to cling on to that old story. Even that old story will never last, because at some point we're all going to be 89 years old, and still then the perfect bubble won't work.
Yeah. Did you have a follow-up from that point?
Only to say that level 1 is who my wife is. It just is. She's every little thing that bothers her. The kids stress her out beyond belief. It's like she can't come to terms with what I've come to recognize. Man, you're gonna die one day. Like we could be gone tomorrow. You know what I mean? So like, what are you waiting for? And I guess what I'll say in closing in my situation is that I really hope things start to change, because I'm not terribly happy with where things are. Although we've come far from where we're at, we're still not in a space that I would see myself being in a long-term marriage with someone. And I don't want to talk in terms of predictions. I don't go there, but I know what my reality is, right? I've come to terms with what it is, and I know where I want to go. And I now know how to get there with the help of you guys. And so I'm taking those steps every single day. So
Yeah. Thank you. That's really well said. And I'll say this out loud to everyone, and also because Cynthia and I are working on it, another evolution, a new evolution of what we want to go into with work, we call wild love. And this is teaching the specifics of what, once you as a man have done this men's work, if she's wanting, she at least has some kind of desire to open in the relationship, but doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what to say, won't show up for shared couples counseling sessions, for instance. We want to teach men how to bloom a woman into more sexuality. And we'll talk about that here right now for a moment. So for instance, I would say you want to create a container for her to show up in a feminine way, to at least try whatever that means for her to show up. Okay. So it might be this Friday at 9 o'clock, I want to spend an hour being intimate with you. And that might be just candles and snuggling. That might be different things, but there's different forms of desire. So I'll pause on the wild love. We'll talk about that more another time. That's going to be more advanced training that we want to get into eventually. Different motivations for sex. So you've heard spontaneous desire and responsive desire. She might be in a more responsive desire place. Okay. And we've heard about that. So I'll keep going. Motivations for sex, obligation. How fucking hot is it when she shows up for obligatory sex? Nah, it's not hot, right? We don't. So that's one motivation that she might feel. So back to, should I just stop caring? Well, if she wants to give a gift of connection, most wives of the men we work with are not in that spot of wanting to give a gift of connection. This one, calming anxiety about the relationship. This is what red pill teaches. Red pill teaches something called dread, which increases her anxiety that she may lose the relationship. It's caveman, cavewoman dynamics. It's instinctual fear that she might have. It's evolutionary psychology, which doesn't mean that it's bad. But if all you're doing is trying to cause her more anxiety so that she tries to give you obligatory sex, or it increases her anxiety so she wants to have sex with you to just relieve that anxiety, that may work to some extent. And so that's one motivation of sex. That's what red pill teaches. And then to add playfulness to the relationship. So Cynthia, we have about 5 more minutes on this call. So in the frame of, should I just stop caring? That's the first step for a man on this journey. It feels like, guys, it feels like you just stop caring.
Yeah.
Because you've been too attached to her moods. You've been too attached to her feeling pressure. You've been too attached to her feeling responsibility. Those are normal things. So from there, I care about her as a person, but I'm detaching in a healthy way from her current mood or her current nebulous emotion, as you were talking about. So which one of these would you say are some of the most important for a man to be aware of as she starts to feel him focus on other things, as she starts to feel him pull away the carrot of the volume of time that he spends with her, the volume of interactions that he wants to, because if she doesn't want to be on this journey with me, I'm going to have less interest in being around her.
Sure.
I'm going to naturally have less interest in inviting her to things.
Yeah.
So talk with us about this and that idea of, should I just stop caring? Will this help?
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me a little bit of like learning to drive a stick shift. And, I would get so befuddled about what gear I'm in, but always coming back to more of a neutral place. Neutral, you can then choose the gear you want to go into. When a woman gets to feel some of your stable neutrality of coming back to home base and inside yourself, it gives her an opportunity to be in response to you. If she feels the opposite of like pushing, that's just, it gives her something to push against. But your neutrality is something that, and your choice in that is something that, even the smallest thing you might say, the way you turn your shoulder, she can feel that in you, and that gives her body gives her feminine the natural impulse to respond, to be interested in, to be curious, to be excited, to even be lit up in the moment. And from there, then you have someone who's a lot more receptive to connection. From there, you might really find out that the feminine in your woman is pretty playful, and she can even start to build her stamina of playing in the moment with you, not getting always feeling like there's a gear 4 that always leads to intercourse.
Yeah, I love that. So coming back to neutral, it offers her a place to be spontaneous. It offers her the opportunity to be feminine and expressive. Yeah. Is there a man facing this challenge right now, or a question before we run out of time for today? I see a bunch of guys came on here. Love seeing you guys on. Unmute yourself. Come on in. Who has a question for today?
I'll ask you a question.
Go for it.
So we kind of touched on this a couple weeks ago. So I'm dating this girl, I've seen her, I don't know, a handful of times. And I've not been able to make her, or not make her, but she's not had an orgasm with me. And so like, she's like, I've got this wall up and I'm not sure how to get it down. And I think her past relationship that she got out of maybe last year was rather unpleasant. And so it's sort of like a challenge to like figure this out.
This girl's a challenge in a lot of ways, I think.
We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good question. We don't have a lot of time, and this is more an advanced question. So maybe pick something specific to ask that's on the top of your head. Yeah.
Yeah. How do I get her to work?
Well, there's this thing called the clitoris.
Yeah.
And then, well, there's different types of orgasm, right? There's a clitoral orgasm, there's G-spot, there's cervical, and I think
it's mental though. Like I think it's seriously like.
Of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
You can't let go of something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know that's a longer conversation than, hey, here's 2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, there's men that are married that ask me this question. There's men at all different facets that ask this question. I'm not sure where we might go with that. So what would you say to start with? It's mental. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that reminds me of, again, the analogy of the gear shift, and that she's expecting herself, like in days past, maybe before this other relationship, to be able to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and it just works that way. And maybe she's never even had to really feel in her body what gear 1 is like. And so at least the program I went through helping women who really struggled to orgasm was a lot about taking orgasm off the table, but really practicing the gear 1, 2s. Can she really feel a simple touch or even just a simple finger against her labia? Can she feel the palm of your hand cupping her and that there's heat there? And she might even, out of discomfort and feeling like a failure or it's her old pattern, just be like, okay, well, let's go from there. But you're really driving the car in terms of like, no, what is gear 1 like for today, for this whole week, for this whole month? We're playing in that realm, because at least the orgasm I'm imagining for her is her ability to really take your touch, your warmth in, like layer by layer into her body. And so it becomes an embodied experience versus I want it and then it just should automatically happen.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, super well. Often the answer is to slow down and to relieve pressure within our own self and with her. Right. And we could be much more specific. You could say things that you want her to say, like, we're going to go slow together. And you ask her to say that we're going to go slow together. You might ask her to breathe into your hand as your hand is against her belly. And there's so many practices. This is why I brought up wild love today, is guys that we work with get to this point, either with their wife or the next women, where you want her to have amazing orgasms, where you want to flourish your own sexuality in a way that, you've never experienced with another person, or even within your own self, with a woman, or in your own self. And these are things I had to face getting out of a past relationship and into new relationship, is sexual difficulties and things like this. Anyway, great question. We'll talk much more about that. Appreciate you guys. Her head needs to be clear as well. Yeah. Well, yes and no. It's like, yes and no. We don't want that to get in the way. Just like her weight, just like the kids being busy with the kids, just like real life. We don't want anything to get in the way of the journey of our intimacy and depth. And that's what Cynthia and I believe, and we teach and we practice. Appreciate it. Thank you. See you guys next time. Bye, guys.